We haven't reached that point. I would love if he wasn't responsible. Again, another profound quotation to be forever remembered in history by our 45th president.
And nobody's told me.
I would love it if he wasn't responsible.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a little bit crazy. Of course it is. Thank you, Brittany. 866-99-SIRIUS. He don't want to admit. I mean, that's his buddy. They got an arms deal. We don't want to mess up this arms deal. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, she's running for New York Attorney General. Letitia James is here. Tish James. Good morning, Madam Public Advocate. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Thompson.
How you doing this morning?
I'm fine. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good. So, Public Advocate, just a little while longer, it would seem. Is it, should we take it for granted, though, is it automatic because you're a Democrat in New York that you can win, you'll just win this race?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. Listen, we took it for granted that Hillary would be our president, and see what happened.
Yeah.
We can't take this for granted. And so we've got 15 days. We're crisscrossing the state, trying to introduce ourselves to individuals, particularly in upstate New York, about all that we have done as a public advocate, as a former city council member, a former attorney general, assistant attorney general, and how we would like to be the next New York State attorney general, representing the interest of New Yorkers and serving as a people's lawyer. And so it's really critically important that we not sit on our laurels, that we not take this for granted, that we work very hard, and that we not underestimate, the potential for a Republican becoming the next attorney general. That Republican candidate who did vote for Trump and proudly, speaks to that issue and obviously doesn't understand or doesn't believe that the attorney general should be in the business of fighting back and standing up for the interest of New Yorkers against the policies of this administration.
So your opponent, a Republican, voting supported Trump. His name isn't Kanye West, is it? That's not your opponent.
No, it's not Kanye West.
They might be cousins, though, huh?
They could be cousins. I don't know. I don't know if he's on medication either.
Oh, Lord have mercy. So now, help our audience understand, if you would, Tish, when you talk about the people's lawyer, really what this position really means and the importance of this position, especially right now, the position of New York Attorney General.
So, I look forward to fighting and investigating government corruption in Albany, Washington, D.C., or in any municipality across the state. I look forward, obviously, to holding the Trump administration accountable and making sure that the laws are enforced, particularly as it relates to health care. I have recently met a woman upstate New York who said that as a result of the repeal of the individual mandate and as a result of her premiums going up, which was directly related to that, she says that she's got to make a decision between taking a medication and eating.
Yeah.
And that really should not be the case.
That's real.
Premiums have increased as a result of the repeal of the individual mandate. And individuals, most of the Republicans are now saying they're fighting for, ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and how they're going to fight that everyone with pre-existing conditions be covered, which is just a lie. It's an outright lie because they fought to repeal ACA. In addition to that, there's the opioid crisis, and we do know that there's a countless number of New Yorkers whose families have been destroyed as a result of the opioid crisis. You got environmental issues in Newburgh, in Hosek Falls. You've got public housing, which is crumbling in Buffalo and in New York City. You've got scammers who are targeting seniors and immigrants. You've got to stand up and make sure that we enforce the law, particularly as it relates to nursing home abuse. You've got individuals on Wall Street who are engaging in practices which put our economy at risk. You've got the foreclosure crisis is still with us.
Mm-hmm.
You've got zombie houses, which dot the landscape of New York State.
Right.
And you've got student debt, which is increasing, and I think that's the next crisis that's around the corner that we've got to deal with. Individuals who are going through not-for-profit schools or for-profit schools like Trump University, and they've got degrees that are absolutely worthless, and and a significant amount of student debt, which unfortunately is not allowing them to move forward. And you've got this attack on the labor movement, and you know that the labor movement is inextricably tied to the middle class. And you've got this administration which is seeking to have more states become right-to-work states, and the right-to-work state is nothing more than a right-to-work-for-less state. And most states that are not unionized are states that unfortunately individuals are living below the poverty level. So all of those issues and more. And lastly, women's rights, reproductive health care. And the issue really is, an issue that really should be between a woman and a doctor and no one else.
Right.
But unfortunately, there's individuals in Congress, and now you have a conservative Supreme Court, which may repeal Roe v. Wade. And then you'll have women, unfortunately, now going into the back alleys.
Of course, Tish James with us, folks. Of course, people around the country are curious about Donald Trump. We know what happened with the last Attorney General. Is that something, as you're engaging voters in New York State itself, because people around the country aren't voting for you, obviously, but everybody around the country has an interest in what the New York AG is going to do in terms of dealing with the Trump family and the Trump family's corruption. But within the state of New York, is that a question or an inquiry you're getting a lot of, Tish, about picking up, I guess, where Schneiderman left off?
Yeah, one individual want to know, are you going to pick up where Eric Schneiderman left off? Two, what are you going to do to address corruption in the state of New York? 31 elected officials have been convicted, indicted, or disciplined in the state of New York, and so we've become the laughing stock. And three, what are you going to do to defend and protect the rights of New Yorkers, particularly against a hostile administration from Washington, D.C.?
Mm-hmm.
Countless number of individuals obviously are concerned about, the president who imposed upon urban states all across this country the inability to deduct the state and local tax. And so when people get their tax bills, it's going to be a sticker shock. And a lot of people who voted for the president are going to have buyer's remorse because they're going to see their tax bills go up. And it's because we can no longer deduct state and local tax.
Right.
In addition to that, people are just concerned about consumer rights, environmental rights, women's rights, housing issues. The federal government has pretty much closed for business. We're not getting any assistance from HUD. That's why public housing is crumbling. We're all on our own. It's really all about states' rights. And as you know, the last pillar of democracy has been attorney generals all across the state who have joined together, particularly Democratic attorney generals, and they filed lawsuits against this administration. They filed lawsuits against this administration on the environment, on women's rights, on immigrants, on the Muslim ban, and the list goes on and on and on. And so the firmest pillar of our democracy has been the law, and it's been up to the Democratic attorney generals all across this nation who have stood up and defeated this administration each and every time.
Also, Tish James with us, folks, quarter past the hour. Talks a little bit more about criminal justice reform. Does the New York AG even hold much sway in policy when it comes to criminal justice reform?
Yeah. So the Office of Attorney General, the 60% of what they do is they represent state agencies. You are the attorney for a lot of state agencies. State agencies are your client. And one of the agencies is the Department of Corrections. So on one hand, you are defending the Department of the Corrections, but on the other hand, you also have a role as part of advocacy and the ability to engage in affirmative litigation, where you can file lawsuits against individuals based on pattern and practices, and you can introduce legislation in the state legislature. And so one of the things that we want to focus on using our ability to advocate is to try to reform our criminal justice system, getting rid of cash bail, diverting individuals who suffer from mental illness and poverty, because mental illness and poverty should not be a crime, reducing some of these relatively minor nonviolent catch-all crimes, which unfortunately individuals use as an excuse to stop and frisk individuals.
Right.
We need to decriminalize marijuana and legalize cannabis and make sure that we regulate it properly. And because the war on drugs has been a complete failure, it's been a war on primarily black and brown and poor people
That's right.
in the state. So we can do so much more, and we need to close a lot of the correctional facilities upstate New York, which have been perverse economic development agents, perverse economic development incentives to hire and to employ people upstate, and open schools, invest in schools, and invest in human infrastructure. And that's what we really should be doing in the state of New York. And I'll be using the bully pulpit, my relationships with the state legislature, since I worked in Albany for 10 years and was able to negotiate budgets and pass laws and draft laws, and know a significant number of the members of the New York State Legislature on both aisles. We also have to make sure that we turn the New York State Senate, which is now in Republican hands, to Democratic hands, and so that we can move forward on a progressive agenda such as voting reform, making sure that we have same-day registration and we don't have to just vote on one day. We can do early voting. We need to work with the state legislature, the state Senate when it becomes Democrat, to work on housing issues. Like, for instance, that expose in the New York Times about the Trump and his family exploiting laws,
right.
MCI, major capital increases, and having taxpayers pay for that, and then also having resident tenants pay for that as well. You got a double benefit. We need to close that loophole and not have landlords pass it on forever. Just because they gave you a new refrigerator, you're paying for the refrigerator over the lifetime, over your own lifetime. It doesn't make sense. And luxury decontrol and preferential rent, all of these things have been held up by Republicans in the state Senate, and so many other issues that we could pass if the state Senate becomes Democrat. We can help New Yorkers, and I could join with both the democratically controlled Assembly and hopefully the democratically controlled Senate, advancing the interest of New Yorkers as opposed to the interest of special interest individuals with large pockets and lobbyists who only lobby on behalf of corporations and rich people.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's very, very important. Tish James with us. The first, if I'm not mistaken, Tish, the first woman to win statewide election here in the state of New York. I think I'm right about that, right?
Well, no, Kathy Hochul is the lieutenant governor, so she's the first woman.
Was first black woman. I'm sorry, that's what I mean. The first black woman.
Yes, I'll be the first African American woman statewide, and as Attorney General. But the reality is that that's really a historical footnote. That's important, and I'm glad we're making history. But that's really not important because I know a lot of people who have first before their names. The question is really, what do you do with it? And what do you do when you're in a position of power to transform lives and make a difference for individuals in the city and in this state who believe that government is so removed from their lives and really have no impact on their life, or people who've just been sort of cynical of government given all these convictions. We've got to restore public confidence in government and restore public confidence in the general public and let them know that we're here to serve them and work for them.
Indeed. Folks, as she says, she's crisscrossing the state. We appreciate the time she spent with us this morning, really addressing all the issues. Oh, lastly, let me just give you an opportunity to address this. The New York Post is accusing you, well, practically every Democrat, you, Governor Cuomo, Kirsten Gillibrand, all of you of avoiding debates or debate ducking. Would you like to respond to that?
Sure. I think I look forward to debating my opponent. The problem is that I am a proud supporter and defender of unions.
Yeah.
And there is currently a strike going on. There's a picket line in front of the New York One headquarters. And until such time as those negotiations are settled, I will not cross the picket line. I will not undermine the right to organize and the right to strike. And so I will not engage in that debate if it is at New York One. Now, if someone else wants to hold a debate, I'm more than happy to hold a debate. And I
Yeah.
think it's important that individuals understand that I did debate on New York 1 when I ran for re-election for public advocate, but they were in the midst of negotiation, and there was not a picket line in front of New York 1. So there's a huge difference. And two, the members of Local 3 are my students. And so I
Okay.
consistently teach to them about the right to organize, standing up for the labor movement. And so it would be hypocritical of me to cross the picket line and to undermine the rights of unions and the middle class and our country, which is why our country is so great. One, it's because of the labor movement, and the individuals need to understand that. I will not allow a corporation to take food away from the tables of these workers, and because this corporation is trying to reduce their health benefits and a number of other protections and their pension. And so that's why they're on strike. They're fighting for their families, and I support them on that.
Yeah.
I will not cross the picket line.
Good. No, I'm glad I gave you an opportunity to address that. That's important, and I agree with you on that score, definitely. Letitia James for New York AG, folks. I'm supporting her. I hope you will as well, friends and family. As she said, let's not take for granted. You know, she is a Democrat. This is New York, but let's take nothing for granted. Let's get out and vote for Tish James. She's the current public advocate. Normally, you know, lately, public advocate has been a stepping stone to the mayor's office. And many of us, this is me talking, y'all, not Tish. Many of us envisioned that. But when you win a statewide race down the road, then that makes us envision Tish maybe even for something else down the line. But I don't want to get ahead of myself and get in trouble with her. I'm gonna leave that alone. I just want y'all get that on the way in the car on the way to work. Tish, great to have you. Anything we can do to be supportive, let us know. Good luck to you, okay?
Thank you. Just get out to vote and get everyone out to vote November 6th. And just remember, so many individuals died and bled for the right to vote. Don't take it for granted.
That's right. And she stands on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm and others folks. And we really admire her and are very, very proud of her. Do get out and vote. And we're going to keep pushing you, Tish, okay?
Thank you. Bless you. Thank you.
All right, bless you.
Listeners.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your day. All right, folks, 866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-47. Tom Steyer standing by. Let's get a quick call in. Evelyn's in Texas. Evelyn, God bless you. Good morning. Get woke and vote. Get out the vote. Get ready for impeachment.